Hi, Wildcats. There's over 200 of you joining to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us, and we're happy to address the topic with you, What Now? Strategies for Agility in Internship and Job Search. The University of Arizona's Internship Council and Student Engagement and Career Development is hosting this discussion because the employment market has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's totally normal to be anxious and unsettled given the situation, especially if you are a member of the class of 2020 and planning to graduate and launch your career, or you were a student who had plans for a summer internship, for academic credit, or for summer income. Our goal with today's session is to help you consider the ways to find new opportunities and to ramp up your search even during this challenging time. My name is Stephanie Springer, and I am the University's Internship Council Fellow and Director of Internships for Public and Applied Humanities. I'm pleased to serve as moderator for today's discussion. Joining me on the panel to share their expert insight include Abra McAndrew, the Assistant Vice President for Access, Engagement, and Opportunity at the University of Arizona. Joining us via audio, we welcome Greg Mena, who is a Senior Talent Acquisition Business Partner at ADP. From the University of Arizona's Campus Health, we welcome Mia Zamora. Mia is the Mental Health Counselor with Counseling and Psychological Services. For those of you familiar with campus services, that's CAPS. And finally, we are pleased to include Brenda Sanchez. Brenda graduated from the University of Arizona with the class of 2018. As a recent graduate, Brenda has great insight into the internship search process because she completed not one, but 3 internships during her time with public health and the humanities. Brenda now works as the Board of Binational Program Coordinator with the Southeast Arizona Area Health Education Center. To the students and graduates who are joining us, we welcome your questions about your job and internship searches. Please indicate those questions by utilizing the chat function of Zoom. As a note, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available to you for reference after the session. Because we already have questions coming in, we'll jump right into the first one, which I'll pose to Abra. Abra, can you tell me, are there opportunities opening up right now that students can prepare and market themselves for?
Yes, Stephanie, thank you for that question. Hello, everyone. There are opportunities that are opening up. At the same time, I don't want to minimize the current challenge that we're facing as everyone prioritizes health and safety, which continues to be among our highest priorities right now. And it is affecting jobs. And I'm sure you have seen in the news that the number of people that are currently working compared to 2 months ago, it's much lower right now. Than what full employment would look like. And we were at one of the lowest unemployment rates, 2 months ago in over 50 years. So it's been dramatic and sudden change. And so it's understandable why that's in the media. At the same time, in the last 30 days, over 600 employers have posted positions to our University of Arizona Handshake instance. That's our platform where students can find internship and job postings that are targeted specifically to students enrolled in the university. And so there are some opportunities. Those are maybe going to look a little bit different than what graduates or students might have been imagining for themselves. The industry where we're seeing the most activity right now is education, higher education, as well as K-12 education. A lot of activity there. Healthcare, of course, government and nonprofit, as well as internet and computer software. So those are the industries where we're seeing the most job posting activity, new opportunities that are being posted. And those are all our essential services right now. So those of you who, are looking for ways to help in this situation, there are ways that you might be able to help and also earn income. At the same time, want to recognize that just the precariousness of the situation that we really hope that people can continue to prioritize their health and safety as they search for employment.
Great, thank you. So Greg, given with what Abra just shared with us, can you tell me, as an employer yourself, what are employers looking for right now?
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me today. For those of you that don't know, talent acquisition business partner is just a fancy word for recruiter. So what I do is I'm a campus recruiter, and one of the big things that employers in the industry right now are looking for are students to be flexible and to be resilient. Obviously, this is a very unprecedented time, and a lot of the normal structures in place, from training to onboarding to normal hiring practices, are looking a little different now. So we're looking for people and students that can be flexible with that. Students that are obviously understanding that this is a different time, and that resiliency that I spoke about is really important, because these next, I'd say 12 to 24 months are probably going to look a little different as we figure out what that new norm looks like. So as you get into your new job, being resilient through things that may not work exactly the way you would want it to, or may not be as smooth as you would hope, is going to be an important factor that a lot of employers are looking for. The other thing that I would say that employers are looking for right now is positive focus and kind of the attention on the bigger picture. As Abra just mentioned, right, things are different right now. So understanding that hiring will start to open back up again in different industries, probably sooner than others, but we will start to hire again. And so, don't get discouraged, stay positive, stay focused, and being able to show how you've been resilient and flexible is going to be a really important aspect that employers are going to look for right now.
So Greg, I like that perspective, being flexible. In public and applied humanities, I tell my students to always focus on career discovery. Are you specifically looking for certain majors when you and other employers are hiring?
Most of the time, it's not about the major. Most of the time, it's going to be about a skill set. So, unless you're wanting to be a nurse or you're wanting to go into engineering, where those majors are going to be much more applicable to those fields, most of the time we're looking for those soft skills, or the ability to problem solve, the ability to work with people, as I mentioned, the ability to stay resilient and flexible. So it tends to be more about skill sets than name of major.
Great, thank you. And I think talking about skill set makes a lot of sense. And Mia, that actually brings up a question for you. What are the unique emotional challenges present in this situation? And how can students maintain an optimistic perspective, especially with thinking about their skill set, thinking about that plan A might not be the plan for them anymore?
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is really having to pivot from your set plans and what your expectations have been for your future, which means having to think adaptively and creatively in a time of high stress when it's difficult to do so. There's some additional challenges present in that now we are all kind of lacking access to the established supports and coping strategies that we have relied on in order to manage our stress. And there's also a grieving process that students are experiencing. The graduation celebration, your plans for the future may have changed. We're also facing a health crisis that could potentially lead to loss of loved ones and a loss of your known way of life for right now. So I think what we know about maintaining optimism and maintaining a resilient perspective is that it can be intentionally cultivated by being aware of how you make meaning of the events in your life, and then learning how to shift your perspective about that meaning. Optimists tend to not take things personally. They believe that negative events are generally temporary as opposed to permanent, and they try not to allow stressful events to impact many aspects of their lives. And there's some ways that they found, that research has found, to cultivate optimism. One of them is pretty simple. It's practicing gratitude. I encourage students to identify something they do every day, like brushing your teeth. And during that time, also think about 3 things that you're grateful for that day. Because you're connecting it to something you do every day, it'll make that habit more sustainable. It's also important to look for the lessons in failure and in hardship. What can you get out of that experience that will help you thrive and flourish in the future? One way to look for those lessons can be to gather outside input to check your assumptions before you attribute your challenges, finding a job, or getting calls back to your lack of employability or some negative characteristic about yourself. Do some research, check out how accurate that is. Are your friends getting callbacks? Are there, ask for feedback from interviews about how you did in that interview, to make sure that you have a realistic perspective about what's going on in your life.
Thank you, Mia. And I think what you said about gathering outside input is really critical. And with that, I'd actually like to shift to Brenda and to talk to you about networking, because as I mentioned in the intro, you did 3 internships during your undergraduate career at the U of A. And it's said that networking is always important, as many internships, many jobs are never advertised. In a more competitive environment like students are finding themselves in right now, networking may be even more critical to one's success. What networking strategies did you use to secure your internships and eventually your full-time employment?
That's a great question. Thank you, Stephanie. So I recommend looking back at all the people that you have worked with, that you have volunteered or even interned with in the past. Reach out to them and see if there are any current needs that the organization may have and how you may be able to fill it for a possible job or even for a second or first internship. After I graduated, I was able to extend my internship with the organization that I currently work with, and we co-created an extended internship that actually gave me the opportunity to learn a lot more about the field and helped me further network. This opportunity was great for me personally because then it led to a job opportunity. It's never too early to start networking. If possible, start your freshman year. I know that professors always told me that every first day of class, don't forget, network, come to our office hours. And I really wish that I could go back and tell myself as a freshman to start networking early, because those are the people that once you graduate, you're able to reach out to and see if they've heard of any job opportunities or if they have any internships. During undergrad, since I was working on 2 degrees, I made sure to do multiple internships that were related to both of my degrees. That way I was able to get a better view of the opportunities that were out there post-graduation. It's important to step out of your comfort zone. Many of the internships that I personally did were not exactly where I saw myself working because I didn't realize at the time that I actually enjoyed those things. So stepping out of your comfort zone, especially in a time right now, as it is right now, where things are a little bit more limited, will help you grow more as a person and also career-wise. Volunteering. Volunteering will help you network with people that have similar interests. It will also help you find new things that you may like that you were not aware of. Reaching out to past professors, advisors, friends, organizations that you have previously worked with will give you that opportunity to know what they are offering and what some of their partners are offering for jobs and internships. Don't be scared to tell people that you are looking for an internship or a job. I know that when I was looking for internships, I told everyone that I knew that I was looking for an internship. These are the things that I'm looking for. Post-graduation, I did the same thing. Anyone that would listen to me, I told them what I was looking for. I had my 2-minute spiel about my qualifications, and even if it wasn't relevant to the conversation, I just wanted people to know. And that actually led to me finding out about a lot of opportunities that I didn't know were out there. And it's awkward at first, but definitely as you go forward, you get more comfortable with just telling people, I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for an internship. Many times jobs and internships aren't listed online. And especially right now, I feel that everyone is looking for jobs and internships online. And so to kind of be ahead of the game, reach out to people, email people, talk to your friends, because a lot of times we get emails asking for recommendations of people that may be looking for jobs. And those are jobs that won't be posted. Those are just jobs that are shared via email. So the more people that know that you're looking for a job or an internship, the more people that are out looking for jobs and internships for you as well. And just make sure to tell people what you're interested in, because then that way, if they hear about an opportunity, then they're able to send it your way. That would be definitely my 2 cents to that.
Thank you, Brenda. And I loved what you said about even pursuing internships that might not be in your original interests, because you never know what you might discover through that opportunity or who you might get connected to that could leverage the next thing for you. And I think that's important to keep in mind right now, is that whatever you choose to do right now doesn't have to be the rest of your life. I don't think anybody on this call is in the same job that they were in when they started their career. And in 5 to 10 years, we may be in still at the U of A or still with one of our community partners, but we may not be because the future is fluid. So I think that was a really important message. Thank you for sharing. Greg, if I could shift to you, because a couple of questions have come in about the current situation and having offers of a position or an interview been delayed or rescinded. What should students do or recent graduates do? Should they keep in touch with that employer if that offer was rescinded or if the interview was delayed?
Absolutely. So first off, understand that any company or organization that has to rescind an offer, that is the very last thing that they want to do. We try to keep in mind the experience of the candidates as they're going through this process. So know that if a company did have to rescind an offer, an organization had to rescind an offer, it was not because they wanted to, it's because they had to. But also keep in mind that if you were scheduled for an interview or you did have an offer, it means that company or that organization was interested in you. So by all means, keep in touch with your recruiter, keep in touch with your hiring manager, whoever your point of contact was with that organization, keep in touch. Now, while you're keeping in touch, make sure you're reiterating your interest in that position or in that company. That kind of goes back to my earlier point of resiliency and staying positive. Employers are going to want to know that the people they initially had on their radar prior all of this are still going to be interested in it and are still committed to that position or to the company and when we come out of this. So when you're keeping in touch, reiterate your interest. Also take this time to really learn as much as you can about that position or about that organization, about that company. Understand maybe how that role may be a little bit different once we do start to re-engage the hiring process. And again, that's a good dialogue to have with your recruiter or with your point of contact at the organization. And then also be patient. I think a lot of employers are in the same boat as the candidates in this case, where we are waiting on direction from the government or from the health professionals to find out what the next steps may look like. So while you may want to have more specific answers to timelines or when they're going to be able to post the job again or when they can bring you on, employers may not have that just yet. So stay patient, stay in contact with your employer, with your point of contact. And like I said, utilize this time to learn more about that organization, learn more about the company, learn more about the industry. Is the industry going to be the same? And can you be utilizing this time maybe to increase a skill set that's going to be even more desired in that industry or moving forward once we come out of this?
Yeah, that's great. And I've heard from a lot of students that, the only opportunities that are available for them right now are essential services positions, like in grocery stores or fulfilling orders. And I've shared with them that it might make sense, depending on their specific health situation, to pursue those opportunities for the moment. Again, realizing that this doesn't have to be forever, that there are great transferable skills that they can get from any opportunity that they choose to pursue right now. And that our University of Arizona's Student Engagement and Career Services offices can help them figure out how to frame that story of what experiences they're getting now that can then position them well for the next thing that's coming. Mia, I'd like to ask this next question to you because it came in as Greg was talking about rescinded opportunities. How can students cope with the experience of a rescinded offer or delayed responses? It's a hard thing to deal with. How do you cope?
Absolutely. One of the most important things is to acknowledge and make space for your feelings. When you ignore or block out your anxiety or your sadness about what we are going through, a lot of times that can lead to a more intense emotional response later on, which is more difficult to manage. So try to be aware of what your red flags are for stress. Maybe it's losing sleep, maybe it's change in diet or an energy level, and really actively prioritize self-care during this time. Make that part of your job search responsibilities, is taking time to exercise, taking time to sleep, to continue to socialize and have contact with supportive people in your life. And make that something that is just as important as hunting for a job, so that you can be your best self when you're in interviews and when you're dealing with these really stressful times. Another thing that can be really helpful is focusing on what you have control over, not all of the things that are out of your control. Particularly now when so many things feel out of your control, really thinking about what do I have in my control that I can influence right now. And sometimes it's about that specific job search, but sometimes it's also about controlling your environment, making sure your space feels comfortable, and that we, given that we are all kind of stuck in our spaces, if our space is feeling out of control, it tends to make everything else in our lives feel more out of control. As I'd said before, I think how you view rejection has a big impact on your ability to be resilient and to move forward. If you look at rejection as an opportunity for learning, for growth, trying to figure out what you can improve on, then that enables you to adapt and improve your experience, as opposed to getting bogged down in feeling negative or feeling really defeated. The last thing I think can be helpful is, and it goes back to, Stephanie, something you were saying, is maintaining the long view and the big picture. Remind yourself that this isn't going to be forever, and that this first job is likely not going to be the job that you're going to have in 5 years. One question that can be helpful is to ask yourself, how will I feel looking back on this event in 5 years? That really puts things into perspective. If you think about things you were really upset about 5 years ago, now we have that sense of calm that comes with space, and we are able to recognize that the intensity of the emotion in the moment is not going to be the intensity or hold the same importance down the line.
Yeah, great. Mia, I liked what you said about, focusing on what you can control. And I think that's related to one of the questions that many people on this, many students are asking. And Abra, I'll pose this question to you. What tactics can students do to help create a successful online job search at this time?
Thanks, Stephanie. And before I continue, I know that there was a little trouble with my audio before, so I just want to make sure, is it working now? Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you for letting me know about that. Yeah, so tactics for successful online job search. I mean, I think a lot of great strategies have been mentioned, because you want to couple your online job search with using your network to help you hone in on where you might have the best outcomes at this time. So looking through your resume, like Brenda mentioned, identifying the organizations that you've worked for in the past, who they may have moved to another organization. There's another organization you can kind of add to your list, right? As a place that you have an affiliation to, right? And you can reach out to someone and ask them, hey, what's going on in your organization? What are the needs, right? How are you doing, right? And understand better what's happening with those organizations, to put context around the online job postings that you might be seeing. So the two platforms that I know you're familiar with, wherever you are in your career, whether you have a lot of work experience or not, you're probably familiar with LinkedIn, and that is a place to start to again, look at who your contacts, what organizations are they working for, what jobs do those organizations have, and couple your online search with your network as possible. And then Handshake is great, because those are really targeted to people who are currently enrolled in an academic program. So you might be able to identify there the active search for people who are similar to you, because LinkedIn is much broader in terms of the experience level of the jobs that are posted as well. But that's a place to do a lot of good research before you start applying to postings, because what you're going to want to do when you apply to postings is you're going to want to look at 3 or 5 or 10 postings for the similar kinds of roles that you're interested in, and find the language there of how the employers are talking about that skill set that Greg mentioned. So you're using your relationships, and then you're identifying your skill set, and you're going to make sure your words in your profile and in your resume are matching, right? Those words that they're using to describe the skill set. Obviously you have to keep your integrity, right? You have to have these skills, but you're going to want to align and identify the ways in which you're reflecting those skills in the language that those employers are using. Other flexibility in this time where it's very competitive, I highly encourage you to think agilely. That's the topic here, in terms of what roles are adjacent or within the same organizations that you want to work for, even if it's not the role that you had originally imagined for yourself. Similar to the themes that you've been discussing of kind of finding a way to get started now, to continue to build skills and to learn. Your first job, you're kind of if it's your first job that you're looking for, you might be getting paid to learn anyway. If you're changing career fields, right, in this time, you might also be in your first job thinking, I'm going to be taking a step back, right, and I'm going to be learning a new industry. So look for adjacent roles to the role that you would ideally like as well. And then as much as you can be flexible about geography, you know, research has shown that those folks who graduate into a recession in previous times, because this is not the first time that this has happened, this recession is different, you know, in terms of the speed at which with which it hit us and the reasons why it hit us. But people who graduate in a recession, if they're able to be flexible with geography, and if they are able to be flexible with roles, and maybe they might be changing roles every couple of years, which is a thing that people do now anyway, those folks are the ones who catch up with their career much more quickly. Those who sit and wait for a year for things to get better or to find the exact job that they were looking for, you'll need to have a very good reason why you did that, a very good example of what you learned during this time that you weren't working, you know, to continue to make you competitive as you move through your career. So, you know, your advice, Stephanie, to kind of find something and commit to it and commit to learning from it and to doing a good job there, you know, that's really good advice. It will be, what that job will be different depending on your level of experience and what kind of degree you have and all of that. You know, the good news is, good news for bachelor's degree graduates, you know, at least, and those who have at least a bachelor's degree, is that in times of economic recession, you know, we fare much better based on that level of education than others in our community. But we can also take that as a responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. To find an opportunity now, looking online, that allows us to help, right? To contribute, because we have that education and that privilege that we can do that, and not to be too proud, right? To take something that allows us to help and keeps us working and, you know, allows us to get paid at this time. So those are the strategies, you know, be geographically flexible, match your materials to the skill set, and then consistently apply, make it a daily responsibility to apply for things, apply to as many opportunities at the same time that you could see yourself potentially doing as you can customize your materials for. Because again, you know, you need to be able to, the employer needs to be able to quickly recognize that your skill set and your interest in this position matches what they're looking for, because there's going to be a lot of people applying in that way online.
Yeah, I liked your advice, Abra, about, you know, steps you could take to be more competitive. And I think one of the key pieces, right, is that to just keep taking action, because a lot of people have just given up. And so to all the students who joined us today, I think they're already one step ahead of the game, because they're already thinking about how they can be strategic with their plan and move forward, so that they can, you know, succeed in securing that job or securing that internship. Brenda, this next question is for you. In a more competitive environment, networking maybe even more critical. So what networking strategies did you use to secure so many internships and to secure your full-time job?
So after I graduated, I actually didn't find a job right away. It took me 5 months to find a job. I applied to 12 jobs. I only got 6 interviews. And then I decided to take a break. And by break, I mean I extended my internship that I had done the previous semester. So I worked with the organization, and we were able to co-create this experience that actually helped me become a better professional. During this extension, I was able to work more flexible hours because I was no longer a student. So I was able to network a lot more with people that were already out in the field. I remember that after I graduated, I would literally tell anyone that would listen that I was looking for a job and that these were my qualifications. And I always had an electronic resume in one of my emails drafts. So after we would finish this conversation, I would usually respond with, well, if you hear of anything, let me send you my resume and maybe you can help me share this. After job interviews, I would always end with thanking the employer for letting me even interview. And I would always mention to them that if they knew of any other employers that were hiring, and if they felt that maybe I wasn't the best fit for them, to please pass along my name or send me other organizations that were hiring. And I remember when I first started doing this, it was super awkward. It felt weird because I really wanted to get the job from the organization that I was applying to, but that's not always the reality. Sometimes employers have specific qualifications that they're looking for, and we don't all fall onto that. So through even just mentioning to those employers that I was open to them sending my information to other people, I was able to find out about other organizations that were hiring that I would have never even thought of applying for. And this gave me really great background information on myself. And I learned a lot about myself through these interviews, because at every interview, I would change maybe the wording that I said to describe something that I thought I knew how to do, but I didn't quite know what verbiage to use. So take interviews as a learning opportunity, because it doesn't matter how many mock interviews you do, it isn't until you're in that room that you realize what you know and don't know. And then during the summer, especially given kind of the COVID situation, take this opportunity to really research what opportunities are out there. And maybe not so much what internship opportunities or job opportunities, but what organizations exist. Our fields are so big that we don't all know kind of what organizations exist. So if you get ahead of the game and this summer you research the organizations, you have a list of organizations, and you know what their missions are, what exactly they work on, that really helps you grow. You learn what you may be interested in, what you're not interested in, and then you can make a list of all the organizations that you maybe can relate to. And then once we are able to maybe do more in-person contact, you can go in person to these organizations and personally introduce yourself, because it's one thing to send an email and it's another very different thing to see a face to the person that's sending the email. When you're doing this research, it will also help you find maybe volunteer opportunities. Volunteering is a great opportunity for you to grow, and it also looks really great on your resume. Volunteering also gives you the opportunity to work more remotely. So a lot of organizations I know are switching to an online platform. So they need people to help them with these online platforms. And sometimes organizations aren't as tech savvy as people that are just graduating or are seniors in college. Reach out to your advisors. I know that personally, if I wouldn't have gone in to meet with my advisor and tell her that I was looking for an internship, I would have not found the internship that then led to my job. I remember I walked in and my advisor had just heard of an internship opening 2 hours ago. And she told me about it, and she's like, oh, this totally aligns with what you're interested in. I applied to the internship the next day. I heard back a week later that I had gotten an interview, and I wouldn't have even known that this organization existed or what exactly they worked in if my advisor wouldn't have told me about it. And so the only way that I even found out was because I was open and told my advisor, I'm looking for this. I had my elevator speech ready. Definitely reach out to anyone that is willing to help you. Your friends, your advisors, your professors, they are there for a reason. And the U of A has great resources for this. I know that my friends now reach out to me and they tell me about some of their interests, and I keep them on the back of my head. And whenever I get emails from other organizations saying, hey, do you know anyone that's graduating and that is interested in this, I'm able to forward that information to my friends.
That openness and vulnerability and willingness to make networking something other than a transaction, right? I think, that's if I don't get what I want from you, then, like, you can't help me, I can't help you, right? I think that's a really good mindset to keep no matter what, right? Networking is not just a transaction, right? And if you're open about what your passions are and what your needs are, people will want to help. And that's what, especially you can draw upon your affiliation as a university alum, alumni will want to help people. And I know some of you, I'm seeing the questions, some of you may have already lost jobs, right? Like you're a more experienced professional who's a student too, and you've lost a job. And it can be very hard or humbling to have to go back to people who you knew from your past experience and say, I'm looking for a job now, right? But people are going to understand this situation, like this is not, as Mia said, a reflection on you or something for you to take personally, right? So, mustering up the self support and the self-love and the willingness to be open and to communicate that, it can go a long way at this time, and it can really boost your online job search as well. So great, kudos to you.
Yeah, and I would like to echo that. I think there's two opportunities here right now that students can take action with. One, the semester is ending, So, and whether you're graduating or not, you're ending a semester. It's a great opportunity to send a thank you note to people who have impacted your life this semester, because thank yous are really kind of rare these days. Written thank yous, we maybe are well versed at saying thank you at the end of a conversation, but a written thank you, even over email, is a really great way to connect with a professional and let them know, what kind of difference they've made in your life. And it's a great way for them to remember you later on, because those thank yous are so rare. And so it can be a really quick email to a faculty member, to an advisor, to a teaching assistant, to anybody who is related to your college or life experience so far. And then another great resource are those alums that Brenda is, for example. She's an alum. She's connected students to opportunities that exist right now. And Abra spoke about how the alumni network is a great one. Since we're in a virtual environment, one great network to connect with is the Bear Down Network. You can connect with alum all over the country, and University of Arizona alum, even if you have no other connection, you both have this connection through the U of A. And so it's a great way to reach out, to maybe do some informational interviews, to gain some additional insight and expand your network in those ways. Greg, there is a question here that's a little bit different flavor than the ones that we've been answering, and I'd like for you to tackle it if you would like to. What advice do you have for students who have active job offers at this time when it comes to salary negotiation?
Sure. So first off, if you have an active job offer, congratulations, right? Those are not as abundant right now as they were before. But I would say that when it comes to negotiation, you want to be very, very careful with that. First off, you want to understand the market. And as we mentioned before, we very quickly went from a candidate market to an employer market. And a candidate market, obviously, where there's more jobs than candidates. And now we're kind of in the opposite of that. So you want to be really careful when it comes to negotiation, because that can very quickly go south, and then you've soured your your relationship with your employer before you've even gotten started. Or in worst case scenarios, the employer can sometimes rescind that offer if they feel like you're being unreasonable. So when it comes to any kind of negotiation, make sure you're first off doing it based on data. I think we all want more money than we currently get paid, and I think we're always looking for more, but be realistic when it comes to what you're trying to negotiate. Oftentimes the salary is one of the most difficult things to negotiate, because that is often set by an organization's HR department. So if you are going to talk about the salary or negotiate the salary with the employer, make sure it's based on data. Information that for sure is accurate, whether that's coming from Glassdoor or you have firsthand information from your recruiter on what the salary rates are. Keep in mind that most employers are going to make fair and competitive offers. And so, being really careful with the money part. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that salary is not the only thing that is negotiable. And as I mentioned, oftentimes it is the most difficult thing to negotiate. But look at other things, right? Maybe a company is not going to offer benefits for the first 30 days, and maybe that's something they're willing to be flexible on in this time, where they can offer those benefits starting earlier. Or maybe you're going to be eligible for your first raise after your first performance evaluation, and maybe that evaluation is typically done at your 1-year anniversary. Maybe they're willing to move it up 3 months or 6 months, so you'd be eligible for your first raise earlier than normal. Think about other things that may be open to negotiation other than just the flat salary. The other thing you want to be careful is to not make assumptions. And this is very much a blanket statement. Don't make assumptions about the salary. Don't make assumptions about anything. I know a lot of people right now are assuming that because people are working from home now, that will be an option moving forward. When in reality, working from home works great when everybody's doing it. But as organizations and companies start to reopen their doors and employees start to move back into the offices, when you have some people in the office and some people working from home, that's when it gets a little bit tricky. If you have some people in a conference room and some people on the phone, that's where the communication can tend to break down a little bit, and there you can find pockets of information that aren't getting shared. So keep in mind that everything that's happening right now is in its own bubble. And when everybody's working from home, the same rules apply to everybody. But as we start to open the doors and people go back into the offices, working from home may not be as readily an option as a lot of people may think it may be. Again, that's going to depend on the industry and depend on the employer for sure. But when you're talking about negotiation, make sure you're focusing on building relationships. Remember, those are people you're going to be working with moving forward, and you want to start that off on the right foot and on a positive note.
That's great. Thank you. You know, you talked about being in that virtual environment. Students saying, what are some tips and tricks that you would recommend so that they can stand out from other interns or other first-time employees in the virtual setting? And I'll let anybody who wants to take this question to take it. I think because we're all working in that environment at this moment.
Yeah, so I'll start, and anybody else feel free to jump in. I think one of the most important things when you're working in a virtual environment is communication. In fact, we had a group of interns that were moved to an at-home environment in the middle of their internship this past semester. And one of the things I think they learned very quickly was that it's even more important to communicate when you are working in a virtual environment. Obviously, when you're in an office setting or you're physically next to everybody else, it's easy to communicate and talk to people. But when everybody's in their own individual silos, communicating, in some cases over communicating, is going to be important. It shows your immediate supervisor that you are actively engaged and still performing well. It also can help provide support to your teammates and other people within the organization. And it's also a great opportunity to show that in spite of this new setting, you can still have a high output and be productive. So I'd say communication is going to be key in terms of standing out, but also maintaining a level of productivity in your position.
Thank you. Abra, there is a follow-up question to you because you talked about being, you know, agile with your geography. What about job searching when you're locked in a particular city, like if you're Tucson bound?
Yeah, I mean, that's a real reality for a lot of people, and that geographic flexibility may not be there. And so then I think it's, you know, in this kind of environment, you have to really ask yourself, what can I be flexible about, right? In terms of the industry that I might work in, the role that I might be interested in, right? Finding that place where you can be flexible and even stretching yourself to be, you know, as flexible as possible there. All of it is going to come down to your timeline, right? You know, how comfortable you are going for a while without opportunity. The other thing I would say is that potentially you could look for, be flexible in terms of the type of opportunity that you're looking for. Not the role necessarily, but are you willing to do part-time work? Are you willing to do temporary work for a while? Are you willing to do a contract assignment, right? Or Brenda mentioned volunteering, right? Two of my key career experiences that I had, I got through some kind of volunteering, right? So, you know, you set your boundaries and your limits about what that's going to be, but providing service, you know, gets you connected, shows what you can do, and then people might decide they can't do without you, right? So those are some of the different strategies that, you know, you could think of if you can't be flexible with geography. I hope that helps.
Great. So we are almost out of time, but lots of students have been asked about, you know, what resources are available for students after this webinar. And Abra, Mia, I think that the university provides lots of services. Could you speak to some of those?
Yes, so we will send out to everyone after this webinar who participated a list of the resources through student engagement and career development that are available to you. Those are available for at least a year after graduation for any student at any degree level. So, and we have a number of free resources that are available at any time to the public on our website as well. But one thing that we're offering just primarily to people who participate in this webinar, if you're interested in it, is a short-term temporary account with a service called JobScan. It's a free account where it will actually, you could put in a job position that you're interested in and you can put your resume in and it will show you how well your wording and your skill set is matching. So that can be a helpful tool for you for accelerating your job search online. We have folks available to help you with all aspects that we've talked about today and online content as well. So we'll send out the links to all of that.
Great. And in addition to all of the resources that Student Engagement and Career Services provides, your academic units often provide some services too. So connect with your academic advisor, your internship coordinator, the faculty in your college to see how you can partner those university resources with your local academic unit resources. I wish you the best as you discover your future. And from one wildcat to another, bear down.